Hi there, everyone. My name is Brooke. I'm an intern at Alzheimer's Orange County, and I'm going to be leading this group that's called Feed Your Brain Read. So I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint and then we're going to work together to go through the PowerPoint and discuss some different things. Obviously, it's quite difficult to interact with people when they're not in the Zoom meeting or when you're sitting on your couch at home, but bear with me. So let me just bring up my PowerPoint really quickly. Alrighty. So as I said, welcome to Feed Your Brain Read. Um, Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. We're just going to have a few different things on our agenda today to speak about. So firstly, we'll do some introductions, then an icebreaker activity. We'll try would you rather questions. Then we can read some comics together. So although this group is called Read, that doesn't always mean that you have to be reading a book necessarily. You can choose any number of things to read. So, in this specific Zoom, I'm going to talk about reading comics. So, although those aren't the most like normal item that you'd be reading, it's still something that will keep your mind moving. It's really important to spend some time reading every day if you can, whether that's the newspaper or what have you. So if you can go to the comic section and laugh at some of the funnies, then it is a really great way to keep your mind stimulated. So then at the end, if anyone has questions or comments, I'll be able to answer those. But because no one is on the Zoom today, I'll just have you email me those questions if you come across any while watching the video. All right. Thank you so much. So first, I'm going to introduce some of my friends. So because I don't have any participants on the Zoom, I'd just like to introduce you to a few people just to keep the flow of the group going. So the first person I want to introduce you to is Sarah Lee. So Sarah Lee, I'm going to ask everyone what they would like for Christmas. So Sarah Lee has shared that she would like a genuine leather purse for Christmas. Then we have Joe Knight, and for Christmas, he says he would like some new fancy socks. Then we have Paula and John Simmons, and for Christmas, they say they would like a new television. So, of course, we all have wishes for this Christmas season, what we would like. I think I would wish for coronavirus to be finished and over with. I think that's something that everyone has on their mind. But if I were to think of a gift, I might ask for a month-long yoga membership. That's something that I would like for Christmas. And you go ahead and share at home if you're sitting near a caregiver or a loved one, if you can share with them what you would like for Christmas. That would be great. Just have a little conversation about it. If you need to pause the video, go right ahead. Alrighty, so now we'll go on to a quick icebreaker, okay? So this is a little different because it's not so interactive due to no one being on the video, but I'll just ask these questions kind of hypothetically. And if you're at home and you're able to answer them with someone, that's great. If you want to write your answers down on a piece of paper, that's also great. These would you rather questions, sometimes we just give an answer without even thinking of an explanation. And other times we have a really elaborate explanation as to why we chose a certain option. So for instance, the first question, it says, would you rather relive a past winter holiday or fast forward to a future one? So in my instance, I think I would like to go back to a past one. There was one Christmas, excuse me, where my family and we gathered in Big Bear at a cabin. I want to say it was about probably 10 years ago, a long time ago. And we gathered together. It was my aunts and uncles, my family and my grandparents, and we all gathered together and we played games and we played in the snow and we were able to go in a jacuzzi. It was a lot of fun. And that's a Christmas that I will always remember. So that's one that I would like to relive. And if you can share at home, if there's one Christmas you'd like to relive, or if you think of a future one that you'd like to go to, maybe Christmas 2021, since this Christmas is obviously going to be much different. I'd like you to share your opinion with someone, or maybe you just write it down if you don't have anyone around. All right, so we'll go on to the next one. Would you rather receive the best gift that you already received in the past, or receive a new gift? You're not sure whether that's a good or a bad gift. So for me, I would probably receive a gift that I already received. I'm not sure what it would be though. I guess I would have to say I would like to receive a camera again. I really enjoyed one year my mom gave me a digital camera. She actually bought me two, and she gave me two options for the digital camera because she knew that it meant a lot to me. So that's something that I would like to receive again, probably, as it was so meaningful to me and it really sparked my interest in photography. So go ahead and answer with the person next to you or on a piece of paper. Would you rather receive the best gift you already received, or receive a new gift and not know whether it's going to be good or bad? Finally, the final would you rather question will be, would you rather spend Christmas with your family or three of your favorite celebrities? So I know this sounds a little silly, but some of us wouldn't like to be around our family on Thanksgiving or on Christmas. So maybe we have had enough of them during Thanksgiving and we'd like to switch it up and spend time with celebrities instead. So you can go ahead and think to yourself which you would prefer. I think I would probably spend Christmas with my family over celebrities. But if you do think of celebrities as being a better option, then I encourage you to pick three celebrities that you might want to spend time with. And then share those with your partner or with anyone nearby, or just write them down for a later look so that you can share with someone later on. All right, so that concludes our Would You Rather section, which was like our introduction, icebreaker. And now we're going to go on to some different comics. So like I said, reading comics sounds a little silly as it's not very intense reading. A lot of them are super short, but they can be fun and witty and they keep our minds moving. So this is a Charlie Brown comic. So the first box says, I would have made a good evangelist. You know that kid who sits behind me at school? I convinced him that my religion is better than his religion. How'd you do that? I hit him with my lunchbox. So this is a super silly comic. I'm sure you all have heard or have read this type of comic or have heard something silly like this before. So I just encourage you to have a little laugh, and then we're going to think about some different aspects of the comic on this next slide, okay? So what's the theme of this comic? So I can go back and we'll just have a look at this and think of the theme. So it's humorous, right? The theme is potentially about like argument skills or debate skills, but it ends up just being that the girl reacts to the boy's question with violence. She hits him with her lunchbox. So she convinced him that her religion is better than, she convinced him that her religion is better than his religion. So this seems super silly, but she was practicing her own type of debate skills. Does the levity of it allow you to talk or think about something that you wouldn't normally talk or think about? So the topic of this comic is religion, sort of. So, does this comic kind of bring levity to religion? A little bit, right? It seems like a silly interpretation of an evangelist, um, or it is a silly interpretation of an evangelist. And does it make you kind of think about different religions or question your own religious beliefs or want to have a discussion with someone about religion? It just depends on how you interpret it. But it can be interesting to kind of reflect on that after you read something like this, a witty comic, right? The next question is, do you read comics? So in your spare time, do you normally read comics? Um, that's a question for everyone, really. I know a lot of us don't really read the newspaper anymore, but maybe you do. Or maybe you read online comics, or maybe you have comic books at home. So do you read comics? Go ahead and answer that question with your partner, someone nearby, or just jot down an answer that you can reflect on later on. And then, how do the comics make you feel? So, how do comics in general make you feel? Do they make you laugh? Do they make you cry of laughter? Are they something you like to write? Are they something that you maybe don't like to read because you think they're too silly? So, how do they make you feel? That's an important question to answer as we're doing this activity. Because if you're thinking about, how can I practice my reading skills? How can I do more reading? If comics is something that really you enjoy reading, then go ahead. And if comics is something that you're really not interested in, then you can find other ways that you can incorporate reading into your daily routine. So we've talked about a few different ways that you can incorporate reading into your routine. You can do reading of quotes, of important quotes, or you can read important addresses like the Gettysburg Address or the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. And then we also talked about poetry in our first section. So you can take time in your leisure time to read poetry if that's something that interests you. So everyone has different interests, and we can all use those interests to help us stay mindful and stay updated on current events. If you want to read the news, if you want to watch documentaries or movies and turn on the subtitles and do some reading that way, there's all different ways to incorporate reading into your everyday schedule. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide that has another comic on it. And then we'll kind of come back to these questions as we go, okay? So this is actually one of my favorite comics I've ever seen. I don't know where I found it initially, but I just find it so silly. As a grad student, I definitely can relate to this dog. As he's sitting amongst the fire in his apartment. So if you see in the first picture, he's sitting all by himself with a cup of coffee. And here he is again. He says, "This is fine. No problem. This is fine." And then in the next one, he starts drinking his coffee. He says, "I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently." So everything's okay still. He drinks some coffee. It looks like the fire's maybe getting a little closer to him. He says, "That's okay. Things are going to be okay," as his arm is kind of scalded. And then in the last photo, he's melting. He's burning basically because of him just allowing this fire to surround him and not running away, not putting out the fire, not using a fire extinguisher, not calling 911. He's just been sitting there thinking, this is fine. I'm okay. So the reason that I can relate to this is a lot of the time there may be difficult things going on in life, or like right now, everyone is very encompassed by the coronavirus, and it's possible that you really don't know what's going to happen next. So we've all sat here and maybe we've just thought, this is fine, it's okay, I'm home. And now we've all been home for 9 months and it just seems a little repetitive. So So it can be quite frustrating in that way. Really quickly, I'm just going to stop sharing and double check that there's no one waiting to get into the Zoom, and there isn't. So let me just share once more. Okay, perfect. So again, this is a super relatable comic, and the theme of this comic would probably be optimism versus pessimism. So although optimism in the end makes this dog begin melting, he is trying to stay optimistic and think, okay, this is fine. I'm fine. Everything's going to be fine. And then if we look at the second question, does the levity of it allow you to talk or think about something that you wouldn't normally? So does this comic kind of enable you to talk about you feeling or overwhelmed by the coronavirus or by anything really in your life that might be going on? Maybe having a lot of things to do, being really busy, caring for other people. And all you do is you sit in your chair and you just say, this is fine, I'm doing great, everything's great. As human beings, we have a habit of when someone asks us, how are you doing? We always say, good, I'm fine. So it's really looking at this and thinking, am I really fine? Are there flames surrounding me? Am I going to be okay? Or do I need to maybe call an emergency line, or do I need to use my fire extinguisher to kind of put out some of the flames? Do I need to run away and take a little breather away from these flames that I feel that are surrounding me, right? So then the other question was, do you read comics? We already answered that one, as long as we were following along. And then how do the comics make you feel? So with this specific comic, how do you feel? So if you can answer that with someone nearby, or if you want to write it down, like I said before, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel frustrated that you let a lot of things in your life overwhelm you and that you can relate to this dog in the photo? Or does it make you realize that you're really good at putting out the flames and problem solving and continuing forward, but not melting in the end, right? Making sure that you're taking care of yourself before allowing yourself to get to this end point here, right? Great. So we'll go on to another comic now. So this is the third comic that I chose, and it starts off with saying, number one, explain Newton's first law of motion in your own words. And then the little boy looks like he's got an idea, and he says, Yakafu Magrug Paboa Zink Watum Gazork Chumble Spuz. Nonsense, right? And then the last one, he says, I love loopholes. So think about for a second what has happened in this comic. So first, he has a look at his quiz, it looks like. Then he has an idea. He's furiously writing in the third one, but it doesn't seem that he's writing anything very meaningful. But then in the end, he says, I love loopholes. So that takes us back to the first square where we really address what the question has asked him to do. So it has told him to explain in his own words. So what has the boy done? He's created his own words, right? So he's created something, his own language that he would like to explain the law of motion in. So this is a really very silly, simple comic that kind of makes you laugh in the end because you're thinking, oh, geez, this little boy, he's not going to get a very good grade, but he did do what the teacher asked. So we can go back to a couple slides before. What's the theme of this comic? I think it's like a witty, sarcastic look at like school and maybe just questions in general and how we can interpret them. So he's looking at this question and he's thinking that it's very difficult. So in our everyday lives, we may encounter questions that seem really difficult, and we may look at them exasperated and think, oh, how am I going to answer this question? and then we get an idea, and we may answer the question directly or we may answer it indirectly, right? You may not know Newton's first law of motion, but you might think back, what did I learn in class? What did I learn about Newton? What did he study? Things like this, right? And then we would be able to answer the question to the best of our abilities. So then we can look at the second question. So does the levity of this comic kind of allow you to talk about school or being questioned in a funny way? Of course. So if you want to turn to your partner or your loved one or your caregiver nearby and speak to them about what might happen when you're asked a difficult question that you don't know the answer to, maybe you make a joke out of it. Maybe you say a silly response to get out of explaining the answer. And that's okay. We're all entitled to making an answer to the best of our abilities, like I said. And we're not always going to be tested or quizzed like we are in school. In everyday life, we might just be asked questions that might be confusing or frustrating. And all we can do is just answer the best that we can, right? And then the last question is, how does this comic make you feel? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you think back on school and how you might have tried to get away with something like this when you were in school? And what does it make you think about? So, if you can turn to your partner or your caregiver and think together about what this comic means to you, that would be fantastic. In the meantime, I'll go to the next slide, but as I said previously, feel free to pause at any time and take the time to look to your partner and have a little discussion about the comics, or maybe reflect on other comics that I haven't put in here that this reminds you of. All right, so this is another school related comic. So we have our homework is we have to write 100 words in this journal every day. 100 words. So the boy, he looks at the paper, he goes, ugh, so many words I have to write. So what does he do? He draws a picture. And then he says at the end, fortunately, one picture is worth 1,000 of those suckers. And we see him kind of tossing his pencil to the side and walking out of class. So he thinks he's so smart, he's found the solution. So this one is very similar to our last one about school. And again, it's very silly. It probably makes you think back on your school days when you try to get away with maybe only doing half of your homework or making it look like you did all the work but didn't quite finish. These types of things, right? So I'll go on to the next one. If you want to discuss this one with your partner or with someone nearby, that's great. All right. This one's back to Peanuts or Charlie Brown. So the first one says, do you ever think much about the future, Linus? Oh, yes, all the time. Charlie Brown says, what do you think you'd like to be when you grow up? And then Linus says, outrageously happy. So this is a really cool comic that I really like, as we are pressured when we're younger, and even in later life we're asked, what are you going to be when you grow up? Well, don't you know? Don't you know what you're going to study, what field you'll work in, what job you want? Don't you know yet? So this can be a really frustrating experience for a lot of us if we don't know what we want to do when we're older. And obviously, for an older adult who's already lived a career, you can kind of think back on before you had that career. What did you think you were going to do? Did you always have the plan to be a firefighter or a teacher or a salesperson? Did you always have that idea in your mind? Or did it change over time? Did you wonder, how am I going to achieve this goal? And were people always asking you, what are you going to do with your life? What would you like to be when you're older? And so this is kind of a play on that, as Linus says, I would like to be outrageously happy. So I really like that answer, as it is a really good goal to have, to make sure that you're making the specific moves in your life to ensure that ultimately you'll be happy, right? So the theme is probably happiness if we think about it that way. And does this comic allow you to talk about kind of your future or your past careers in a more comfortable way than you might have before? Does it kind of bring up the topic without the pressure of asking maybe your grandchild, what would you like to be when you grow up? And accepting their answer if they say that they want to be happy or they don't know, and then questioning them and saying, well, if you don't know, what's something that you really are working toward? And then the last question would be, how does it make you feel? So does this comic make you feel happy? Does it kind of shine a light on this difficult question and how we can better understand people around us who don't quite know what they'd like to be when they grow up? There's a number of thoughts that we could have after reading this comic. So take your time. You're welcome to have a look at it for longer and really chat to your partner, your loved one, your caregiver about why this comic might be important to you. Alrighty, back to Peanuts again. This one's in color and it does look a little more visually appealing. So it is interesting, different comics in black and white versus in the newspaper when they're in color, how they might catch your eye more, how they may be more interesting to read. So I challenge you to read the comic section and kind of see how different some comics are that are in color versus ones that are in black and white, and how that might make you more interested in one over the other. So Snoopy is typing in the first box saying, in my life, I have known a lot of, and then Lucy comes up and says, by golly, you better watch what you write in your autobiography. If you say anything bad about me, I'll kick your dog dish. And Snoopy continues, weird characters. So in his life, he has known a lot of weird characters, and we can assume that Lucy is included, right? So the theme of this one is, what do we think? It could be like reflection. Snoopy's reflecting back on his friends and what he thinks of them. Um, it's another silly one that would make you laugh and kind of question your own friends in your life. If you're writing an autobiography, who are you including? What are you saying about them? And obviously, Lucy would be very upset if Snoopy said anything kind of mean about her or unappealing about her. So it's a funny little discussion that they have there. So now that we've kind of touched on the theme, how does this comic make you feel? So does it make you laugh again? Does it make you think of someone in your life that would probably say something like that to you, saying, if you do this, I'm going to do this? And you kind of look at them and just think, wow, you're kind of weird. You're kind of strange. So this is another cute comic that you can take your time having a look at and sharing with close loved ones, caregivers, anyone in your life that you would want to kind of share this with. They are just funny, lighthearted, and they can really boost your mood if you're reading comics when you're kind of maybe in a lower mood or maybe just having a rough morning, what have you. All right, so I've got one last comic, and it's a Christmas one to match my Christmas sweater. I wanted to make the last one festive to kind of include that into our presentation. So this is another Charlie Brown Peanuts comic. So Charlie Brown's got his tree, he's putting it up, he's decorating it, Snoopy's watching him. He's gonna connect it, and at the end, he goes in Snoopy's doghouse and he goes, which do you want me to unplug? The TV or your clock radio? So this is a really silly message with this one. He's got the Christmas tree, he's trying to be festive, and he's plugging it into a dog house. So that is also really silly. Obviously, we know that normally dog houses wouldn't have an outlet, but Snoopy in his doghouse, he's got a TV and a clock radio. So what do you think he'll give up for the Christmas tree? Either one? Maybe Charlie Brown will have to get an extension cord. So the theme of this one is probably Christmas, um, and kind of giving up something to have something else in return, or to have something better in return, possibly more festive. And then how does this comic make you feel? Does it make you think about Christmas? Does it make you laugh? Because it is funny to realize how many items we might have plugged in around the Christmas tree when we want to put lights on it and ornaments, and there might also be a TV in the room. So there's a lot of factors that go into putting a Christmas tree up. So take some time to chat about that one. It's another silly one, and this one is quite short. So there's not really much to say about it. And thank you so much for watching. So this concludes my video. So if you want to take some time to write down my email, if you're interested in sending me an email with any questions, concerns, if you'd like me to send you more reading material, whether that's poetry, comics, song lyrics, anything that might interest you. And this sounds a bit silly, but I'll see you next year. I'm going on my school break, so I won't be having another one of these Zoom activities until January. But I wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I hope you have a lovely holiday season. And thank you again so much for taking the time to watch my video. And I will look forward to talking to you all soon. Thank you.